welcome to the Kankakee Podcast. I am not Jake LaMore. I am Andrew McBurney, and I'm joined by my co-host, Drew Razor.
Hello.
But don't worry, Jake LaMore is here in the room with us, but he is in the guest seat this time. Hello and welcome, Jake.
I'm in the guest seat. I understand now, out of all the guests that I've talked to over the years, I now understand how they feel.
Yeah.
It's intimidating, isn't it?
It is intimidating being in this guest seat. So I just want to say I'm sorry to all the people that I've interviewed. It's so funny. The last few weeks, I've been trying to just kind of gather my thoughts and come up with, and I still haven't yet, but more than likely by the time this episode drops, people will have read something that I've posted on social media. But at this moment, I still haven't written anything or posted anything yet. So I've been just trying to rack my brain on what to say and where to start. And it's so hard because there's really no words for at least for me. I know I'll come up with them eventually, but just to put it out there without being able to come up with those deep words is that I am leaving Kankakee Podcast along with Pathfinder. And that's been one of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make. Kankakee Podcast was started 4 years ago. May 10th is when it officially premiered.
Obviously,
you know
the day.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's May 10th. If it's not May 10th, it's May 11th. But I want to say it was May 10th, 2021. Obviously, I started developing the idea long before then. Mm-hmm. But what I like to say is one of the thoughts that I've been thinking about as I've been going through this process is that I may have come up with the idea and the concept, but I really do feel like it was fully implemented and just kind of created out of the community because this is not something I did alone, even when I was alone and the owner of the podcast before Pathfinder. I can't tell you how many people I talked to beforehand, like obviously my wife, who was then my girlfriend at the time, she had to listen to me spew so many ideas. My best friend, Don Geisinger, he was actually my very first radio teacher that I had when I was going to broadcasting school. And he helped me come up with ideas too. I would throw names out there and things like that. We came up with all kinds of different names for the podcast, but
what are some of the scratched ones?
Yeah, some of the scratched ones he came up with. Don came up with, I think it was Kankakast or something like that. Yeah,
that's unique.
I think or Kankakee. No. Yeah, I think it was Kankakast, something like that.
I like that.
Yeah. So someone's going to steal that now, which is fun.
There
it's not copywritten.
Yep. No, it's not.
Go buy the IP. It's fun. We still got time.
Domain is open. Kankakast.
And the one that I was stuck on for a while was actually pretty long. And I don't remember actually now exactly how it went, but the consensus was after all the times, myself and Lizzie, my wife, and Don talked about it, we're like, you know what? At the end of the day, people are going to be like, yeah, there's that Kankakee podcast.
Sure.
That's what they're just going to say. Oh, that one guy, he just launched that Kankakee podcast thing. So that's why we're just like, why don't we just call it that?
It works. Yeah.
It's not exactly like thrilling or, but
I think it works.
We just felt like no one was going to remember the name.
Like a long, right.
I don't know. But anyway, so, what's been really nice is like these last few weeks, leaving on good terms and everything, which I'm very thankful for, with working with you guys and working with Jesse and Catherine and Hannah, and Holly, is that, I was able for like the last week, record like 8 episodes, I think, including this one. This is 8 episodes.
The calendar's packed.
Yes, it was, which was kind of funny because when Pathfinder first acquired Kankakee Podcast, the same thing happened. They were like, you need to get cranking.
Yeah.
And so I loaded the schedule. There were weeks where I had literally 2 or 3 recordings of Kankakee Podcast Monday through Friday. There was 1 or 2 weeks like that when, back in June of 23, they just wanted to stack them up. And so it kind of reminded me of like, this is like, just like when I was getting onboarded and now I'm getting offboarded and it's like the same thing.
Right.
But it's been, I've been very thankful for that just because it was a good way to kind of do some of those episodes that I didn't get a chance to get to yet.
Yeah.
And also just kind of be able to go out with a bang, I guess, in some ways. None of them are like, when I say go out with a bang, none of them are just like off the walls, grandiose live podcast episodes, nothing crazy like that. But it was still just like, here's some people that I've wanted to talk to the last 4 years, or the listeners, I should say, have wanted to talk to, have wanted to hear from the last 4 years. It was like some of these I want to get to, or actually a few of them were people that were sponsors from very early on, and we had talked about them being on the podcast, and I was like, I want to make sure that we have them on and stuff. So that I'm thankful that Jesse wanted that to happen, and that you guys as well wanted that to happen. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that.
And tell us a little bit more about what you're setting off to do. You've been in radio before, you're going back to it. What does that kind of look like?
It's weird because I always thought one day I might return to radio, just as maybe as a part-time thing, but now I'm actually going back full-time. And I didn't think it would be this soon because I was only gone for just a little over a year. I left Milner Media in 2024 in February, and now it's April of 25, and I'm already going back. So I will be working for Milner Media once again. They own the Valley and River Country and WFAV, but this time, even though in my 10 years there that I worked there, I did a lot of different things, and yet again I'll be doing something the same but a little different. What the honorable part for me of going back there, and again, it's the hardest decision I ever had to make, but Ken Zier, who has been a monster in Kankakee radio for 40 plus years, or around 40 years, he passed away in the middle of March, this past March, and he was doing the afternoon news on Milner Media stations. And so a position opened up there. So I'm going to be following Ken, who is one of the legends in Kankakee radio. So it's like some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Very big shoes.
Though?
It is an honor. Really. I am very grateful for, Milner's, wanting me to fill those shoes and work with Rob West in the newsroom again and things like that. I am very grateful that they were willing to do that. So yeah, I'll be on the afternoons and we'll see what else happens as well. But when I did work in the newsroom before when I was there, but you never said
10 years. You had to some extent been there for 10 years.
I had been at Milner for 10 years in some capacity or another. I started as an intern.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I started as an intern.
So you basically started as a barista.
I mean, sort of. I don't ever remember. I don't know if I ever got coffee. I remember getting breakfast. Okay. I probably got coffee so when I was an intern in 2014, and it was only an intern for like 3 months, maybe. This was when Bob Malkowski was the morning show host on WVLI, and Ken Zier was the morning. He was the news director at the time, so he was reporting the morning news, and he was also Bob's co-host during his show on the Valley, and those two would just crack each other up. And it was really cool to be a part of that experience because that was a very popular morning show. And so I was an intern. It was like 2 or 3 times a week. I would just sit in on their show for, 2 hours maybe, from like 6 to 8, I think, in the morning. And that's when I first met Ken Zier and, started learning some things from him about news and just radio in general. But yeah, there were definitely, they loved donuts. So, I mean,
Okay.
who doesn't love donuts, right?
Where, back then, where did you typically get donuts from?
It's probably Dunkin'. But also sometimes Pearson would randomly show up and they would, I don't know if it was Pearson's Bakery that brought them or just someone that went to Pearson's, but they would just randomly bring by like a huge box of, and it wouldn't always be donuts.
Funny, I've only had Pearson's a few times, and every single time I never go to Pearson's. It always is.
It comes to you.
It would come to me, and it
right?
wasn't just a donut. It was, hey, Pearson's gave us 2 boxes.
Right.
And here it is.
Always.
And then 2 years later, the same thing would happen again.
Yeah.
So thank you, Pearson's.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Wherever you are.
I think Pearson's is just in Moments now. And well, they might have a store up in like Chicago Heights or something like that. But they're not in, this was when they still had a bakery or a location in Bradley.
Yeah.
So they were a little closer to the radio station.
Yeah.
In Bourbonnais.
Quick shout out to my buddy Matt. Matt's dad runs Pearson's Bakery.
Oh, okay.
He's a buddy of mine in high school.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Yeah, shout out to Matt.
So that's also part of why Pearson's would just appear in my life. I was
you were lucky. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like,
a nice plug.
Something that I think you guys should bring up to Jesse and Catherine is like, Nana's doesn't randomly pop up here enough, I feel like.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
I'm going to call Nana. All right.
I would like to get Nana on the phone.
Yep, right now.
And change that. The one thing that has been nice is we, our Pathfinder office, we're now in the Majestic.
Yeah.
And a few months ago, Stafari opened their coffee house right downstairs.
That's true. So Nana's
is here. It's just not free anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is Nana's catered downstairs.
My question is like, could we walk in the Nana's and be like, we work for Pathfinder, like, can I have a cinnamon roll?
I don't know.
I don't know.
On next episode of Kankakee Podcast, we go to Nana's Bakery.
No. I think the ladies back there, I don't think they care who we are. They're dedicated to their craft. I don't think they're gonna
point. They slave over them cinnamon
respect
rolls.
to them.
Yeah, no, they're all great there.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have a stint working there. So for about 4 months.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Yeah. Every time that I've been in, they have all been so nice. Like they're just fun loving donut making gals.
Mm-hmm.
Like and
they are.
cinnamon rolls.
They're a hoot, honestly.
Are they? Yeah.
They were a hoot to work with.
Yeah.
Always entertaining.
Yeah. Good vibes, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
So I came in April. I'm pretty much, let's see, I hit my 1 year on the 17th. So my Pathfinder anniversary.
Yeah.
Yep.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Yes.
Glad to be here. If you had to give me probably top 3, not necessarily guests, but like Kankakee podcast moments. Like my number 1 was the Moments track episode. Not just because it was sports, but because like the atmosphere, the vibe of it, the coach we talked to, it was very fun loving, very just like open and like we always entertain, but a different kind of entertainment, so to say. So what would be your favorite?
Gosh.
Yeah, that is a hard question.
It is a hard question just because for me, it's not just 1 year like you, it's 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, bringing up the Moments, that bonus episode we did out of the Moments track, the episodes we've done on site are always so memorable just because, the majority of the episodes we've done are in the studio, which makes the on-site episodes even more memorable.
Right.
But I guess I just think of, early on, I guess I'll start very early on.
And I know it's probably going to be so difficult to be like, oh, this is my favorite. This is my second favorite.
Right.
It's hard.
So you don't gotta rank
It's
it.
hard.
Throw out the ones that have left an impression.
No, the ones that leave an impression, I'll try to go in a certain order if
Sure.
I can. But very early on, I think one that became memorable that happened, I think he was episode 13, and that's Nick Huffman.
Yeah.
Most people remember him from the Looney Bin,
Mm-hmm.
and his episode became memorable just because Nick Huffman was a very memorable guy,
Yeah.
and still is. And the thing about Nick Huffman is that he's memorable in multiple ways. A lot of the community is kind of divided on Nick Huffman. I feel like they either really love him or they just really hated him.
Huh.
And that's why
my
he's
favorite kind of people.
and that's why
I never got to meet him.
And that's why he's really memorable.
Yeah.
So no matter if you loved or hated the guy, you knew who Nick Huffman was.
Sure.
And so getting him on the podcast early on, and by the way, like from the get-go, he was a big supporter of it. When I was going through the launch and everything, and he was messaging me, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome, and of course, him going off of what I just said about Nick, of course, he was on my list for potential guests and topics and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came time to record with him, and, we would chat back and forth, he would say, he told me that, he definitely wanted to be a guest and all that, but he kind of pushed me to make it happen sooner rather than later, because he told me, he's like, hey, this is just between you and I, but it's like, I don't know how much longer, I have like that I'm going to be living.
Oh, wow.
And, and sometimes people.
And how much later was it?
A year.
Until he passed.
A year later.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Which here's the thing. I've heard people say that very thing to me so many times. Like, how often have you heard that from either people that have certain medical conditions, or maybe it's their age or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they'll say that thing, I don't know how much time I have left on this earth. And then 20 years later, they're still living.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you kind of, and at that time, this was kind of, I hadn't really had a lot of one-on-one conversations with Nick. Everything I knew about Nick was either things that he was posting on Facebook or from people that knew him, and they would tell me stories. So I was still kind of getting to know him, so I wasn't really sure, like, okay, he's either, BSing me on this, or he's, but lo and behold, it was almost a year later that I read that he passed away, which was just insane. I thought to myself, I was like, he wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just think about, and he, maybe you guys will have to do the numbers, because I haven't done the numbers in a while. Last time I checked, he was still the most listened to episode out of all the episodes.
That's cool. Yeah.
He is either still number one, or number one now might be the Manteno State Hospital episode we did.
That one was interesting.
That one has, for some reason, it's YouTube, right? The YouTube numbers for the Manteno State Hospital episode are just huge. But anyway, so he's up there in one of the most listened to episodes of all time, and that came after his death. I mean, a lot of people had listened to the episode when he was still alive, but after his death, it was just kind of like he's immortalized in this episode.
Well, and I think that's one of the most interesting things about podcasting specifically.
Mm-hmm.
It's because most other types of content you're going to engage in, it's very edited. It's cut down. You trim a lot of the fat. So unless you have like a talk TV show, which locally most people don't,
No, not anymore.
Podcasting is that thing. It's a way to sit and listen to somebody generally unscripted and edited for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
And it's very real. It's a very
Yes.
genuine conversation. It's not just like,
And
these
Nick-
are scripts,
Right. And Nick was a very real guy.
Right.
Let me tell you.
And honestly, like whether they're saying stuff you agree to disagree, those are the best kind of people.
Yes.
Someone who's just like I don't want the mumbo jumbo or beat around the bush. It's like, no, tell me how you feel. Tell me what you think, man.
He was very good at that.
Yeah.
He was very
Those
good
people
at
are
that.
always fun.
Mhm.
Who is another, or what is another podcast episode that left an impression?
I'm trying to think of a numerical order, but that's always hard just because the year, even though it's only been 4 years, some of that's kind of gelled together.
Right.
Another one that stands out to me is actually one that you were involved in. And that was
Which
when we
one?
got to do an episode and tour Crown.
Crown.
That was just
I was going to
so
wait till the end of your list because I was going to say Crown was one of my favorites.
I know that is much later on because that was just last year, I think.
It was maybe 23.
Was it really?
Maybe. I was pretty new.
Okay.
Or early 24.
So it might have been late 23 then. Yeah. Okay. Or but either way, you know, you too. I've grown up in this area. I lived in Bourbonnais till I was 24. And at that time I lived in Bourbonnais, and on the way to work at Pathfinder, I passed Crown every single day. Time.
I never knew what it was. And then I really recommend rewatching that episode because, as Jake said, we got to tour it, and we actually filmed the tour.
Yes.
That's a part of the episode, and it was so fascinating.
It was very fascinating.
What is Crown?
It's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a popular question.
So Crown, maybe at this point in time, it's one of the oldest manufacturing companies that's been in the county for a long, long time.
Well, and if I remember correctly, they're the second highest exporter of aluminum cans in the United States.
I think you're
Is that
right.
the stat?
I think you're right. Something they're like right under. I don't know if Ball is up like either and on top of them or just under them, but yeah, they're up there.
It's
so
like any pop can, and it's specifically the standard size.
Well,
I believe.
at the Bradley location, location is just the 12-ounce cans. They don't do any other size.
Is that what's in the intro of the Kankakee podcast? The cans that are going up the conveyor
That's
belt?
actually Brickstone.
That's Brickstone.
But
Gotcha.
Brickstone gets their cans manufactured at Crown.
Yeah.
So
next time you have a pop can, look on. There's a specific spot on the bottom, and more often
you
than
look
not,
for the Crown
you'll
logo.
see a little Crown on
That's
there.
so cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it has to be a certain number along with the Crown logo. And I forget what
if it's Bradley or not.
Yes, I forget what the Bradley number is. But if you learn what the Bradley number is next to the Crown symbol, then you'll know, oh, this was actually made.
That's so neat.
And so they make beverage cans at Crown Holdings.
It was a very fun episode, and they gave us gifts.
They gave us
and
Yetis.
I love gifts.
What?
Yeah.
They gave us Yeti, like heavy
huge
Yeti mugs.
Yeah, the travel mugs.
Travel mugs.
Yeah, but they were the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it has Crown on, like
that's so
the
cool.
logo.
So when are we going back?
Well, what's
I like
funny?
Yetis.
Funny enough, the two gentlemen that we interviewed that day are actually not even there anymore.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, they're both gone. They both went to other jobs. Juan and why am I forgetting Juan and?
But they were so passionate about cans.
I know they were so. Especially Juan. Juan had worked in all kinds of different companies in that sector. And I forget where, because I'm connected with them on LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
And I saw that they announced that they were doing other jobs now. So I saw that both of them are gone from Crown.
I
don't have a can guy anymore.
Honestly, it is so cool how people get passionate to, within my eyes, very random things. Like cans. One of my best friend from Valpo, he manufactures cardboard boxes, and he thinks it is the coolest. And
he knows everything about a cardboard box.
Like he taught me about like why like the ridges are in there and the size of the ridges.
There's
and
a
why
lot of
they
steps to those things,
There
and
are, and it's like, dude, I myself could never be fascinated with the box, but like the fact that you are is cool. Like I'm like I want to have like that kind of passion for boxes, like or cans.
Well, like we're all drinking coffee right now.
Amen.
So when like here's another. I guess
mine.
I guess
I did have coffee.
I guess here's another memorable moment. Caleb Benoit's from Connect Roasters was a guest. And now Caleb brought to light, he knows so much about coffee, right? I would hope so, being in the business he's in. And I didn't realize until Caleb, went through the whole process of how the coffee bean starts and the plant and everything. It takes 3 years to make those for the plant and the beans to mature. And actually the coffee bean is, I think if I remember correctly, the bean is like in the middle of I don't know what I forget.
It's like a pea pod type thing.
I forget exactly what it's called, but anyway, they have to obviously remove that whole thing to get to the to the bean, and they actually if I remember correctly, and I wish I could remember what they call that.
I will do research.
But
you continue talking.
They use they end up using that for some other things, but regardless, like, can you imagine, like, you know, we live obviously in a very rural community. We're in the Midwest. There's a lot of agriculture here. Can you imagine, instead of farmers, you know, it taking them, what does it take them? 4 months?
Yeah, season, right.
For their crop to mature. Imagine 3 years. And a lot can happen in 3 years.
A lot can happen in 3 years.
And especially weather. And obviously coffee grows in those places that's close to, you know, the southern hemisphere or the equator, you know, so like South America, Africa, you know, all those places like that. And weather events happen there. What if your crop gets ruined? You got to start over again. 3 years. It's just
in Valpo. A lot of times kids would ride their 4-wheelers through the corn crops.
Oh, that happened at our family's farm too. I can't tell you how many times.
Like, could you imagine? Like, it's the third year your beans have been growing, and then all of a sudden here comes 2 brats.
Yeah. And they just ruin it. I cannot tell you how many times my dad or my grandfather had to go out into the field and chase down a dirt bike or a 4-wheeler. It happened a lot when I was a kid. And
I was definitely one of those kids, but
we're no longer friends.
Yeah, I'd go full Karen now. I'd be like, this is a LaMore crop field. Get out of here, kids.
Okay. This is what I'm getting from Wikipedia.com.
Here it is.
It is a coffee cherry.
Yes, cherry. I was thinking it was something a fruit, because it is very much fruit. It tastes very sweet.
It is a coffee cherry, and the bean is the pit of the coffee cherry. Yes, it is the pit.
Yes.
You can eat the cherry.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to be as good.
No, it does not taste like the coffee.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
But yeah, it's like it's the pit of the cherry.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, you're fine. I'm glad you looked.
I was going to think about that for hours.
I can't tell you how many times we've done that on the podcast as well. Just look things up while we're talking about it. So yeah, that stands out to me as well, just because that was so mind blowing. Thinking about all the steps that these things that we use and we consume every day, all the steps they have to go through. You know, just like the aluminum cans. I forget now how many steps it is that they have to go through at Crown, but it's a lot.
There was a bunch.
And obviously same thing with coffee, because even after you get the pit, what comes next? It's, you know, like obviously it's got to be roasted and all of that stuff too, which is obviously what Connect does here in Bradley. Is they do the roasting. They buy the raw material, the raw coffee bean, and then they roast it.
That's cool.
You know? That's very interesting.
Gosh.
Santa Claus was a fun episode.
Santa Claus. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean,
here?
Yes, I had the Santa Claus. That was before your time.
Man,
he flew Delta all the way from the North Pole.
He did.
Delta.
He did. That was so cool. Another thing that sticks out is, okay, we had some run-ins with some animals a few times. The very first time we ever had a run-in with an animal on the podcast, and I've got pictures to prove it. We had, and this was when pre-Pathfinder days, this was when I had the studio in my basement. There was a raccoon in my basement. And this was not a raccoon snuck into my basement. This was a domestic raccoon, and he was blind. So I can't remember Adam.
The raccoon was blind?
Yes.
Okay.
So
was he an invited guest?
Yes,
okay.
He was.
All right.
He was an invited guest.
I wanted to just get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, sorry. I probably should have finished that thought. He was an invited guest. I think his name was Sprocket, if I remember correctly. The raccoon's name was Sprocket.
Did he come with a human?
He did.
All right.
He didn't walk in on his own and say, "Hey, what's up? Can I mind if I get in your trash for a minute?" Which actually,
and can you show me where that is, because I am blind.
Funny enough, though, we actually do have a couple raccoons that come and enjoy our trash can at our house every once in a while. But this was not one of those. Not one of those. Friends. So I can't remember Adam's last name, but he used to work out at the Kankakee River State Park. And I forget the exact title, but it's a seasonal position. And it usually starts around to this time of year and then goes to, towards like November or December or whatever. And so he had he had Sprocket. And I don't know if it was considered like a rescue or what, but he came in because this was the episode. If you go back and look at your feed, this episode is titled like Native American History Month, because Adam had a friend. I think her name was Karaya. I think that's how you pronounce her name, and she has a lot of Native American blood, particularly the Native Americans that lived here in the region.
Interesting.
And so,
do you remember off the top of your head what tribe was most prominent in this region?
Well, they kind of went through a couple of different ones. Potawatomi is also well known, but there was actually before the Potawatomi, it was the. Oh gosh!
All right, Google.
I don't know if it was
Hold that thought. I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, Alinawick, or that was the chief though, wasn't it? Alinawick was the chief. I can't remember, but Potawatomi, they were the last to leave this area before it was completely taken over by.
I'm trying to think too, because I think you talked about it on the French Heritage episode with Museum.
Yes, a little bit. But the Potawatomi were the last tribe to leave.
Yeah.
Yep. From what I'm finding here, the Potawatomi was the most dominant group.
It was. But there was a group before them, and they ended up, I don't know what happened. Could have been a war.
There's a presence of a few other tribes. The Miami tribe.
Maybe it was the Miami I'm
That's
thinking of.
I don't want to butcher the name. Wyandot. Wyandotte? Yep. Wyandotte tribe. Okay. The Illinois tribe.
Yes.
Shout out.
Had a presence in the Kankakee River Valley.
Yeah. So it was probably those tribes. But then if I remember correctly, the Potawatomi actually came down from like what is now like Wisconsin.
Oh.
And they came down here and settled.
Interesting.
From what I remember from a museum episode with Jack Clacy and Jory Walters. Remember them talking about that. I can't remember which episode it was, but I do remember them talking about that.
That's cool. There was a camp that I worked at called Camp Tecumseh. The reason I know how to pronounce Wyandotte, all the cabins were different names
of the tribes.
Indian tribes.
Oh.
So like
I went to Camp Tecumseh.
I was a counselor for 2 years, 2 greatest summers of my life. Close to at least. So like I was in Mohawk and I was in Delaware. Those are my 2 cabins. So we didn't call them tribes, so to say, but like whenever we need our cabin to go, we just shout like, all right, like
Mohawk.
Wyandotte, Mohawk.
Yeah.
Like, and everyone had their own little like sign. So it was like Mohawk, let's go. We'd walk out, that kind of thing. But that's how I know how to pronounce these names. Because for a long time I would have been Wyandotte. Like I don't know. But
you would have sounded the way I sounded when I tried to sound
W-Y-N.
I still butcher them all the time.
Yeah.
Not on purpose, but
I
try my best to pronounce them correctly if I can.
It's only bad whenever Google Translate also does me dirty.
Sometimes.
When I tap on it and it sounded out the exact same way I did, I'm like, okay, that's definitely not
I can't trust you.
Yeah, sometimes. So yeah, Sprocket was in my basement. He was just curled up in his little crate, and then eventually they took him out and they just snuggled him like you would like a cat, or and he just chilled while we recorded the episode.
Cool. That is so cool.
And that was an episode we actually did with a museum as well. That was probably in 21 or 22. But the next encounter with an animal wasn't actually until 2020, the beginning of 2024, I think it was, or maybe the end of 2023. And that was when we had a Spaziri reptile rescue.
I didn't work that episode, but I remember when I was scheduled.
Yeah. And that was Drew. That was probably before you were there.
All the crazy ones were before me.
All the animals. But, obviously with them being a reptile rescue, they brought us, I think it was a Indian milk snake, or it was a milk snake for sure. And then an iguana, I think, is the 2. And that's cool. The iguana just sat and chilled on the desk that we used in that that first podcast studio at Pathfinder. It was kind of funny. Nico, who was as one of the heads of Spaziri, he actually hid the snake in his shirt during that episode. Until like he was trying to surprise me with it. So like I forget, like a quarter, it was either like a quarter or halfway through the episode. I'm like seeing, like
his shirt.
Yeah. And I'm just like, what's going on? And then he was like, oh yeah, this is the other animal that we brought. Yeah. It has a very pretty snake. It wasn't like super huge, but the colors on it were very pretty.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you have 3 podcast episodes in one day? And it was Santa Claus, Nico, with reptiles, and then you had like a third one. It was like 3 very interesting, unique ones, like back to back to back.
I think right there, and there were a lot of days like that. But when there's 3, that's usually when it's pretty heavy. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it could have been Santa Claus and the Spaziri's reptile rescue and
lineup for the day.
And I'm trying to
And
what was they were?
one.
You're right. They were all very unique, and I'm trying to remember. Yeah, what was maybe it was Dr. Porter or something like that. I don't remember, but yeah, they were all very different, or it could have been one of the mayors, maybe.
Sure.
That I had on, because we've had quite a few of the mayors from the county on the podcast. I don't remember, but yeah, they're all very different, total game changers. Like you really kind of have to like change your mindset and then of course you get kind of tired after a while.
Yeah.
So you've done this type of thing for a very long time.
Yes.
Radio, podcasting.
Yes.
Reading, hosting, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about radio or this format that has intrigued you for so long?
I think what's intriguing, at least for me, if we're talking about kind of the differences between the two, I feel like some of the differences are obvious, but some of the other differences to me is radio is cool because you can it's more in the moment. If you are live, that is, at the time you're on the radio. But even if you're not live and it's something that's recorded and then, played back on the air, I think with that, the trick is more trying to grab people's attention, even in a quicker time span, and also, or in a short time span. But you're reaching more people at once, and so there's kind of a trick or a science to that.
Sure.
Just like there is to podcasting. Obviously, if you've got your big podcasters like Joe Rogan and all that, of course, they've got their millions or thousands of downloads, right? But to most podcasters, that's not what the numbers you're getting, right? So, and also it's a longevity thing. I say something on the air,
it's gone.
It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Poof. So
just like that.
Again, there is that pressure of like, I really got to say something memorable because they're not going to be able to go back to hear what I just said. They're going to have to remember that in their brain. That's the only way. Whereas like a podcast, the pressure is, oh, this is going to be most likely there forever.
Yeah.
So
nothing really ever goes away on the internet.
So what I say, I really have to. So there's both. I guess there's similar pressures there, but there's that slight difference.
Right.
Well, I mean, and even though they're slightly different, I mean, you could have done anything. Of all the things to do, you've clearly found.
Podcasting is my heart for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in between the two, what is it about both of those things? What's the similarity between radio and podcasting? There's a thing there that you clearly are very passionate about.
Well, I think the thing there really is you get to reach people and multiple people at once on intimate medium. Radio is intimate, I feel like. And I know some podcasters or even radio broadcasters are kind of using the word intimate has kind of become redundant at this point, but I don't know how else to describe it.
No, I think it's totally accurate.
Yeah. It's just, you get to reach people on such a personal level without actually being in the same room as them. If you do it right, it's going to feel like, and I'm sure both of you have, whether it's a podcast, a TV show, or whatever, that you just love, because when you listen to it, you actually feel like you're physically in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one thing I learned early on from when I was interning at Milner Media, 12 years ago or 11 years ago. Something I learned from Bob Malkowski and Ken Zier. He said, the reason why people love listening to us is because we make it sound like they're right in the room with us.
Mm-hmm.
There's no wall. This goes back to, you could make it I often make this a parallel to music too, because this is talked about in music a lot, is breaking that fourth wall.
Sure.
And it's that way with radio and podcasting as well. It's breaking down that fourth wall of getting over I'm the radio announcer. I've got something important to say, so you got to listen, and everyone else has to listen, versus just like breaking it down to where it's just like, no, we're all sitting in this room right now.
Yeah.
And also trying to describe whatever it is you're talking about, or describe what is going on in the room, because people's imaginations, each one will create their own. So like for me, I've shared this many times, when I listened to the radio or still listen to the radio, I don't know what it is to this day, and I know it's not accurate. I still picture people wearing fancy clothes. I picture, if I heard you on the radio, I just picture you sitting behind a desk with a suit and tie on.
I would do that. I probably wouldn't wear pants, but I would do the top half.
But I don't know where that stems from in my brain, but that's where my imagination goes. But Drew, when he listens to someone on the radio or on a podcast, he might picture something completely different.
Yeah, no, sure. I honestly, I picture students at China FM. I think it's that they're in average clothes. They have their thing they have to say, and then music.
Yeah. So, that's, and it's up to, again, whether it's a podcaster, a radio broadcaster, whatever it is, especially those, because there is, people could be watching us on the video portion of this right now, but, so much with podcasting, even if they are watching the video version, they still might be doing something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can visualize, what this room is.
Most podcasts I've listened to where I don't know what they look like, I start to imagine what
they look like, right?
And
you form a picture in your brain of what they look like.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting.
I even have had ideas of what their hair color might be.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I can't tell you why.
No, and you're thinking, okay, this person definitely has dark hair, right? They're
the Crime Junkie podcast. That's one I listened to for a year or two before I ever knew what the hosts look like. And I was like, I feel like she's got blonde hair. I can't tell you why. And sure enough, she had blonde hair.
Yeah.
And I had ideas in my mind, and I ended up just getting pretty lucky, and they were accurate. But
sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not.
Someone needs to write a very in-depth psychological scientific paper on this.
Honestly, I would read it.
No, there really is.
I would read that paper. It all goes back to imagination. So, and I bring that up is because I think that's why it's such an intimate, piece. Sure. Obviously, video can be too, because what if the person starts to cry?
Right.
That you can visually see that person crying.
Yeah.
There's been YouTubers, content creators who've made a living off not showing their face. Now, I'm a nerd. I watch gaming YouTube videos, but I remember back when I was younger, I don't know, 18, and I'd be watching my Minecraft YouTube videos, and there's these people I'm watching, and they don't have faces, and you're doing the same thing. There's this whole personality.
Oh, you're just watching them the video. Yes.
And for me, and again, I'm such a nerd, but you identify that person with their skin in the game.
Yeah.
So when I think when I was 12, I watched Stampy Longnose. That was his name, and he was Minecraft YouTube, and it was this whole improv world inside of the game. And so if I only knew him by this square block figure, and then whenever I got to see what it looked like, I was like, whoa, this is not at all what I thought. So there is this cool mystery about it, but I think the downfall of that is if you're people who play a character, so to say, there's improv podcasts that they don't show faces but they just talk. sometimes I think that then can, once they have like the big reveal of like, this is what it looks like, I think that can also, then they can see a decline at that point.
Yeah.
It's a bit right. If it's so ingrained
Right,
that
and-
the person, the viewer or the listener is just not used to seeing that
Right.
person. Like if the YouTuber hasn't been adamant about showing their face,
Right.
then yeah, I could see how that could create. But yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because like my son watches YouTube and he watches a lot of video game YouTubers, literally just like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And there are some that the ones that don't show their face, they actually have some type of animated character
I've seen those
in
too.
the corner. And so, like after a while you see that animated version of them and it could be like a fish.
Right.
Like it's not even like an animated person, it's an animated fish. And after a while you're like, oh, that's what they must look like. But as a human,
fish.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as a human, like they probably look like
that's
that.
really
So,
popular right now in live streaming. So people who like live stream video games.
and it blows my mind that they're able to do that.
I don't get it all. But it is because like a lot of people.
Because their mouth moves and everything.
And for some of it, like
Interesting.
people are like,
Yeah.
I like the privacy. Like these people, because you can get famous off of this now,
Yes.
much more than you could have maybe in the past. And I think that people, when it comes to content creators, like in that realm, people forget that like they are real people. Similar to celebrities, where it's like people who will show up to a celebrity's house, like, can I get a picture? And they're like, no, like this is like this is my house. I think part of it also is that people don't want that, which I think is fair. Like I would hate to be famous.
Oh.
Like there's no way in the
I
world.
thank the Lord every day that I'm not famous.
Yeah. But you do have a level of fame in Kankakee. I mean, like, so many
thanks, man.
people. I mean, people know you.
Yeah, you
like,
do that
Well,
Kankakee
yeah,
podcast.
what do they call that?
podcast,
It's some
whatever.
it's some Kankakee pod.
Yeah.
Well, that's another funny moment. This is not an episode milestone by any means, but there was an April Fool's Day and this was when. Do you guys remember the rapper that came out with a song and it was all about? He called it the Kank. You remember that?
Yeah.
He said that's
Yes,
not. It was like
I
that's
do.
not the Kank.
Uh-huh.
And
I've
like
heard that
he
one.
would go to random locations and be like,
No,
"You don't remember this?
I don't think I do.
It went viral.
For a second, I thought
it
I
went
did.
viral locally, and I forget the guy's name. But like the premise of this song was just like not the Kank, and
All right,
so
Google.
so when this
Continue your
was
story. I'm gonna
going
do my research.
viral in the Kankakee area, I decided for April Fool's that I was going to change our name to the Kank Podcast. And I tried to make it as believable as possible. And I actually, what I did in the post and everything like that I made on our social media pages, I said, the city of Kankakee and the Kankakee County Board have deemed that we do not have rights to use the name Kankakee in our podcast name any longer. They've come to us at legal action. And so I said, we've decided we're and you can find the little
episode,
logo,
yeah.
the little logo I came up with on our pages. I forget, that must have been like 2022, I think.
That's so funny.
that happened. But yeah,
Not the Kank.
we were
Is this it?
probably. It's been a long time since I listened to it.
Let's do this is a shout out to ADB ICO. I really hope it's not explicit.
Took a little break and now I'm back. Ducking off cause I love the stacks. Add the snap, but I never chat. Need a belt cause my pocket's fat. From the Kank, and money here from the Kank got me feeling like DJ. Dash in the whip, got me flying off.
Is that the gas and wash?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's it's like I said, it's been a long time.
Totally the Kank.
It is the gas and
That
wash.
is the gas and wash.
Yeah.
How about this? Here's a clip.
Indiana, that's not the Kank. Moments, that's not the Kank. Joliet, that's not the Kank. Orland, man, that's not the Kank. Bolingbrook, that's not the Kank. Oak Lawn, that's not the Kank. None of y'all is from the Kank. Scat Pack.
Or wait, do we have to pay royalties now to ADB ICO?
No.
Okay.
Well,
We'll mute that if we get a copyright
Well, there's
strike.
another thing that happened that you guys already know about. So this was a first that I never thought would happen either. We had a local hip hop rap artist reach out to us to ask permission to use a clip from the news podcast.
Yeah.
That was
Because
cool.
he took a clip of one of the news podcast episodes we did.
Do you remember
that
his
I did.
name?
Jack Capo.
That,
Right, Google.
that song is kind of good. I like that one.
Anyway, so he used a clip from the news in his song, and we did end up giving him
Remind me
permission.
the name?
Jack Capo. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know.
remember
I
you
assume
telling me this
it's
story.
capo, but
Yeah.
like a guitar capo.
Right.
I don't know. That's what I think of.
That's how it's
But
spelled, yeah.
anyway, yeah,
like
that's
capo.
something I never imagined would,
Yeah.
you know.
That is cool.
Yeah, there's so many. I'm trying to think of going back to, I guess, your original question from way back now, just thinking of other episodes that stick out in my mind. There's a lot. The on-site episodes are always
Those are
very
fun.
memorable.
Mhm.
But obviously I can't, one of the biggest reasons people listen to Kankakee Podcast is all the episodes we've done with the museum.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that just listen to those episodes. So Jack and Jory from the museum have just been incredible to work with. And that's been one of my favorite parts.
I can't find it.
Oh, that's okay. He might not have it posted yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I literally just got back to them like a week
Okay.
ago saying
Yeah.
that they could, because I asked Jesse, I'm like, what do you think about
You're going to
this?
be in a rap.
I'm going to be in a rap
That's gonna
song
be
if he hasn't
crazy.
released it yet. Yeah. Right in the beginning of it too.
Yeah.
There
It's
we
like
go.
it's like he starts speaking and the music's playing.
It's
in
your
the back.
you're the producer tag.
I guess
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
You're Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide.
Oh man. But Jack and Jory Walters, or Jack Clacy and Jory Walters from the Kankakee County Museum. I mean, it's just been so honorable to work with them because I've just learned so many things from their
Mhm.
knowledge. And I just feel very lucky. And of course, so have all the listeners too.
Yeah.
They've learned from
I
them as
thoroughly
well.
enjoy the
Yeah.
museum episodes.
That started from the very beginning. It just happened to work out that when Veronica Featherston she literally became the executive director of the museum at the same time I was launching the podcast. And we were classmates in grade school.
Oh, that's
So we
cool.
knew
that's
each
cool.
other. And so she reached out to me, right even before I launched the first episode and was like, hey, would you be interested in doing something together with the museum? And I said, absolutely.
Mhm.
And so it was perfect timing. And it's become such a big part of the podcast and the community, I feel like,
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
So
Well, that's the thing. You knew this, but before I ever worked at Pathfinder and we worked together, I was a fan of the podcast.
and I was very flattered when, we first met and you were like, oh, yeah, I love listening to the podcast.
I really listened. And I can promise you, I did come up with the idea first when I was like 13 years old. I was like, I feel like there needs to be a podcast around here.
I also was not the first one.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, no, and that's again why I don't necessarily like to say and take credit and be like, well, this was my idea.
Oh,
and
sure.
I will
It was
say
my
that
idea
Yeah.
when I was 13.
Credits. Trademark.
there have been some others along the way, but there's one actually that launched maybe a year before Kankakee Podcast, and that was the County Pulse, I think is
Gotcha.
the name. It's either the County Pulse or the Kankakee County Pulse, but I think it's County Pulse.
Gotcha.
That was mainly geared towards sports, but there were interviews on that podcast with some local leaders. I know Jim Rowe, I think, was on the very first episode, and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that Kankakee Podcast was probably the first one to garner enough community involvement.
Yeah.
And engagement and just overall support. I would like to say that. We're definitely not the first ones to come up with the idea. I think it just...
Well, and I think one thing that really works about it is you can do a podcast anywhere, Kankakee included, and talk about world events or national events or pop culture, but your location really doesn't matter. It's about the subject you're talking about. One of the things that I just love about the Kankakee Podcast is, in a way, you're limited to people and places that are in Kankakee.
Yep.
And for people who live in the county that makes it so interesting.
It does.
Just because you, without having to ever step foot anywhere, you can learn so much about people. And that's the thing. If you're doing the episodes right, it's almost an intimate setting. You can feel like you sat in the room with the president of a hospital or the owner of a small business.
Right.
And you can know, yeah, you got into this when you were 12 because your teacher said you might be good at it.
Right.
It's just kind of interesting of kind of treating your hometown like a TV show in a way.
It is that way because I have had people who have been guests on the podcast, and I talked to them after the fact and after their episode was released. They tell me that they will randomly, like, let's say they go into Stafari and grab a coffee. They see a person there that they've never met before, and they're just like, "Oh, hey, I just heard your whole life story on Kankakee Podcast." And they're just like, "Wow, I never knew that about you," or whatever it may be.
I think it makes your hometown just so much more fun.
It does, and that's why I say, like Kankakee Podcast. While I have obviously a ton of emotional attachment to it, I really want it to be the community's podcast. It really, it should be the community's, something that they feel like that they're a part of too. And I hope that listeners know and guests know and however they touch the podcast, I hope that they know that, they had influence in there because there were some listeners that brought some things attention to me that maybe I didn't know about, or maybe they just told me, hey, this really means a lot to me. I think it would be good for an episode. And I'll be like, okay, as long as I've got a good rapport with that listener and I trust what they're telling me, and unfortunately I was not able to get to all of those things, but I tried my best to. It was so hard because after a while, you're just getting it from all directions. People are like, oh, what about this? What about that? And it's like, obviously there's only so much time in a day, and choosing topics and places and people is always so hard to do because there's literally so much. It's just never ending. Even though it's Kankakee County, there's several things, past, present, future. It's limitless, really. It's endless. There's no stopping.
Yeah. I think something that's important to note too is that with, yes, there have been some before, but I think with this one, and this is more giving you your flowers, Kankakee Podcast is Kankakee Podcast because of you. And I think that obviously the podcast will continue with, whatever format that comes with, but for me at least, I look at it more as now that you're leaving, it is becoming a lot more like, oh, this person will do this person will do that, but the reason it's stuck is because of you. And I think, and I know you would never say that, so to say, but I think it's important that is said, and that you have grown this from square one to here. Oopsies. And there are very few people in this world, nonetheless, county, that can do that, especially coming from someone like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan did Fear Factor and UFC and podcasting.
I often forget about Fear Factor.
So I watched Fear Factor actually on Easter, and it was fun. It was like an old episode. But while yes, the podcast will continue, you will be missed very greatly. We will miss you.
I know I'm gonna miss it too.
And while you may not be like Justin Bieber type celebrity, you are a local celebrity at the same time. If I ever mention Kankakee Podcast or your name, they're consistent. I'm like, oh yeah, like my coworkers Andrew and then Jake LaMore.
Oh, that's good to know.
I love the Kankakee News, or I love the Kankakee Podcast. Yeah. And on top of that, you've run 2 shows. You have been doing Kankakee Podcast for a long time, Kankakee News as well, and they're so different. Kankakee News is very hello, this is the news. Where podcasts, you get to just really see your personality. So I'm excited to see where the podcast goes. I think I think it's limitless, but it's hard to see you go because in my eyes, you're Kankakee Podcast. So I'm very excited to see, and with the transition on, you've helped a lot. I myself am taking over the news, and that kind of thing. And that's been helpful, and just understanding your intricacies and how you do it and why you do it. There may be things that can be done that would be easier, but here's the reason why you do this, and it flows right. You've got the system down, so
it comes with time.
Yeah.
And you'll figure out a system, because what works for me may only like half work for you.
Yeah.
Or maybe it won't work at all, or maybe it'd be like 75%.
Right.
I mean, so you'll find a way, to make it work. And
Jake,
thank you for that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I have no words. Thank you.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure,
you,
man.
Drew. That's
Can
so
you
sweet.
share kind of, I know we've kind of talked about it, but what does the podcast look going forward?
Well, I mean, I feel like that's more in your wheelhouse, but I obviously will, as Drew already just mentioned, the podcast will continue on, which is, I'm very grateful that, because obviously, one, deciding to leave was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. Even though I had no longer had ownership in the podcast, I was still doing everything as the owner, for the most part, except for like billing. That was like, and marketing. Catherine was helping out with the marketing. I still had to do some of it, but Catherine helped a lot with the social media and everything like that. But pretty much everything else I was doing, and I was very thankful that, even with that said, Jesse pretty much let me have creative freedom. It was very, very, very rare that he told me, hey, don't do that, or don't have this person on. I think there was literally only 1 or 2 people that he told me was like, yeah, these people are off limits. But other than that, he still let me have creative control, which was very important. For me too.
And I think probably I'm glad you mentioned that. In a lot of ways, you wanted it to be the community's podcast.
Yes, and
in a way, I think your exit from at least being the reoccurring host on the podcast kind of allows it to be the community's podcast more than ever.
That's kind of what I see too. And while some things may change, that's the one thing, because I understand that it's no longer under my management. It's under your guys' management, and I know you guys will do great things. And I would never expect it to be the same, because you can't everyone is different. You can't do something that you yourself wouldn't do. Everyone has different ideas, and that's totally fine. The only thing that, and I think this will stay true, is that it still will be the community's podcast. But that doesn't, I don't think any of the changes that you guys will implement will take away from that. Because I think that's some of the foundation that's been built. While you can remodel, I think the foundation of it being the community's podcast is.
Yeah. And I know from our talks that will never change.
Yeah. And I know
that's going to stay.
And I know that's how, Jesse and Catherine feel about it too. Which is, I think, part of the reason, which is why they bought the podcast in the first place.
Right.
Was to have something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just very important, I think, to have that resource outside of the other entities that exist in the county.
Yeah.
It's important to have that one that's maybe a little more independent than some of the others,
right.
And that's not a knock on any of the other companies in town. I think every media ecosystem has that, right? You could say almost Kankakee Podcast is like the NPR of, of the Kankakee River Valley,
Yeah. And what's cool, like, about this process of, like with you departing, I think, is that, like, I myself had a chance to sit back and be like, this is, like, so cool. Like what you've grown, and then going into it and being like, all right, like I myself, everything that I know podcasting is through you. And so I think that I have not an edge by any means.
Well, you knew some things before me.
Yeah,
right?
but not like, like I hadn't touched Premiere nor Audition before I met you. I used this thing called Tilted Wave that was free online and would only open in a small window. But like going into it, it's like, all right, like I understand the process of like how you got here so much better from listening to you, or just even seeing analytics, and understand like, all right, like where it grew. And so it's a cool challenge to be like, all right, like like what's next.
Yeah, what can you do to take it to the next level?
Doing it with like your vision in mind at the same time. It's been really fun. I mean, like we've only had 2 or 3 talks about it, but
right. It's still been
right.
At this point, it's been a couple weeks.
Right.
It's only been going on a couple weeks.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I know we're kind of off this now, but I want to bring up one more episode that I really liked. So we did an episode. It was a couple days before Merchant Street Music Festival.
Yeah, it was like the week of last year, so 2024.
Yeah, it was me, you, and Brian Prairie, and it was my first episode, like being on the camera, and it was so cool because we talked about the music. You opened my eye to so much local music, like Cat's Pajamas. I love, shout out Cat's Pajamas. It is such a cool band.
Yes.
Such a cool vibe. And we did interviews.
Lots of interviews that haven't even been seen.
No,
not yet anyway. Hopefully someday they will.
Yeah, and those were super cool. And this is not part of my favorite memory of it, but we would walk around. Jake had a camera, and I had
the camera.
So
I had the mic.
Jake had the mic.
Yeah.
And I had this like shoulder camera rig with a monitor on the side, just so I could see what was going on. And it wasn't heavy, but when you have to sit there holding it on top of that stand still, which with my ADHD is far from possible.
Well, and you're not used to being in that position anyway. Right.
Yeah, that you can move the handles and stuff. So the times I'm holding it like this, it was just goofy. But that was such a fun episode that we did. Because like I got to dive into music. Like I know
you love music just like I do.
My focus going into college was music, which it's now. It then went to like audio recording, which is why I came to Pathfinder. Originally came in just for podcasting, and then I had the gracious chance to learn how to do video. But that was one of my favorites because I got to hear so many artists, and I can't remember all the names of them, but like there's some country ones. I'm a big country fan, and it's just crazy because like whenever I went to ONU, this is far from a disc, but you're in a bubble, you know, like the music you listen to, if it's new music that like isn't like popular, it's people you know on campus. Like my buddy Jamil makes music all the time. Great. But that's what I listen to. But you don't realize like what is in the community of Kankakee. Because whenever you drive through, it's like, all right, there's a building, there's a gas station, you know. Like
and it's so funny because that bubble goes both ways. Like, I don't know what's going on in Olivet.
This is
because
true.
I'm not connected, but
a lot is going on in Olivet.
But you do because you're in that bubble, but you don't know what's going on in the community as much. So it's just it goes that bubble goes both ways.
And I'm so thankful that I stayed around here because like I think like you know at times Kankakee gets a bad rep. You know like oh it's maybe a little dangerous like whatever. The community here has been nothing but gracious. Every person I've met, I've had very, very few bad, maybe strange interactions. Like it has definitely opened my eyes, especially like the music scene. It's bumping. And
it is.
Someone I think that's in the head of that is James Leroy. Like with the arts collab and what he's doing and his music, like
miss you, James.
Miss you too.
Miss you, James.
Miss you, Bubby. Little Jimmy. But like it was cool, one, to work with you on that, and also I get James as well. Like just be like hearing all about it, and like his type of music is super cool. Not my jive, very mosh pitty, but like, but when you think about it, like all I know is like here's this guy that plays acoustic guitar sometimes, and here's this guy that plays the keys sometimes.
He plays all kinds of stuff,
and then I leave Olivet for a week, and it's like, and it is some of the coolest sounds I've ever heard in my life, and so. That was very random, but
that's okay.
I know that was one of my favorite episodes, as well as like I felt so cool. I'm like I'm on a Kankakee podcast right now, and like I'm in the back. Like I felt like a Jamie back there on the computer. You know, it was really cool. I enjoyed that a lot.
No, that was fun, and those episodes are fun because you know a lot of times it's with you know someone who's outside of. Pathfinder.
Right.
But, you know, once in a while when we get to do those episodes where it's like, obviously the three of us at that time were all employees of Pathfinder. So, and we're talking about Merchant Street Music Fest.
Right.
And we were just talking about the artists that were going to be playing and we just kind of skimmed over them, played little clips. And those episodes are always fun.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of breaks up the monotony of you know and adds some spice and some layers makes it a little more unique in the lineup of all the different guests and topics and things in the podcast. So
even through here I've learned a lot about like the new places like the venue down the road. That's a super nice place that we do Yarn Factory at, you know. It's
the Yarn Factory is continuing too, by the way.
And I'm glad about that. Yarn Factory was the first like one of the first like shoots that I did, so to say, where I sat there, I ran audio. I remember I was like, I like this because I know exactly what I'm doing here. I know how to plug in the speakers, know how to run the audio. Yarn Factory is awesome. What Bill's doing is so cool.
Yeah, that's honestly one of
It's
the
very fun.
one of the coolest things we've added in the last year. I feel like that was a great partnership. I'm so thankful for Bill wanting to work with us on that.
And such a community builder. Like it is.
He is.
Like,
he's a community builder, and that event is, a community builder in the fact that we get to capture those stories.
Well, and I think what's cool about that is like the crowd that's kind of comes out now from the first one to this one, and we started in formerly Flanagan's, now the Hideout Lounge. Shout out, but. Like we then moved to this new space, which is a little more long. It fits the people a little better. Still standing room only,
right?
Like it's like we're gonna start booking now LLC at this point or LCC.
LCC.
My bad, close.
Reaching that 1,000 cap, huh?
Yeah, like it's just cool, you know. And like and then after that, what happens afterwards? Like everyone's talking. It's even more of this builder for not only the audience of Yarn Factory, but even the businesses. It's a good chance for them to, which I'm not sure if they're a small business, like their building is small, so to say, but
the venue lounge is a small business.
Yeah, but it's a community run business, and it's just, that's what I've seen a lot of, is that this community is so focused on building up others in the community, which from where I'm from, I'm on the Facebook pages in Valparaiso, Indiana. Love you guys, but y'all need to chill out. Like, love each other. Like, go have a drink and watch and listen to a story sometime soon. Because that is something that is so cool about Kankakee, the community, and how
we've got those pages too.
Yeah. Yep. Oh no, there's plenty of those.
I'm on a couple.
No, it's not a gunshot.
No.
It probably wasn't.
No. It was
just a loud sound.
Ma'am, it's July 4th. Like
it was just a firework.
Yeah.
Just a firework. And those people exist everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like some people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And I think maybe sometimes they do realize it once they move away and they settle in a new community, and then they find, there's people like that here too.
Yeah,
it's not just Kankakee.
Right.
I kind of in a way had a unique perspective. Because I went to college at Olivet, and I'm from this area. So I grew up in this area, which was in a way a bubble. I only knew my bubble. And growing up, especially in high school, when we're anticipating leaving to go to college, not many people stuck around. A lot of people left, went to other places. And a lot of people were like, I'm getting out of here.
Yep.
There's nothing to do. I'm going to go live in Chicago for some reason.
Man, that is me. That is me to a T in my 20s.
Sure.
Amen.
And I get it. And a lot of people did it. A lot of people got up and went. And then I went to college and I went to Olivet. So I went to a new bubble surrounded by mostly people who were not from this area, but I was still kind of in the area at the same time. So I got to experience this new bubble, really enjoy it. But then it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's, I'm getting out of here. I can't wait to go somewhere. And I did that. I moved from Bourbonnais to Kankakee.
He got out.
Whoa.
I did.
Yeah.
Big moves.
How long did it take you to move? I mean, it must have been months, right?
A year after I graduated. Yeah. I just never fought that battle. I never had I'm getting out of here. And what has been very interesting to see is, in a way I got to leave and I've been able to see where my friends have gone and come back here. That's the thing. A lot of towns that go through the same cycles. You're in this bubble, you want to get out, and then you go and there's just another bubble somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's a stereotypical thing, I would say, right?
And I think this bubble is pretty awesome.
I do too.
Really do.
It's a pretty cool bubble.
I think there are things to do in this bubble that you can't do in other places.
Oh, absolutely.
And you really don't know until you venture out and see other things.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, just to go to extend further on that, I often think people mishear that when, like you just say, I think this bubble's pretty awesome. I think they often hear that, that means I don't think about all the negative things that happen or the things that need attention. And it's like, no, we recognize those things and we want to improve upon them and talk about them and things like that. It's not that we're not noticing those things or taking them into account. It's just that in order to do something about those things, you have to build on what the positive things we already have.
Right.
That's how you make those things, those negative things smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. You can't grow with a negative view or a negative mindset. That's just, I mean, just think about it. Like, how many times has a person really focused on the negative in order to grow into a positive?
Right.
Like it doesn't really work that way. You have to take the positive. You have to look at the positive in the negative situation.
Yeah. I think we're in a unique time with this bubble right now as well, because like Kankakee is growing. You know, like it's like
it's really cool.
It's very nice. Like the Riverfront project, that's going to be fantastic.
Yep.
Like it's
a lot of things.
Or even like in the Bourbon area, like the Grove. You know, like that being put in, and like it's. I definitely, from my time when I got here in 2020 to now, it has been nothing but growth. Now, do they still take 2 years to finish roads? Yes, but
sometimes longer.
Yeah, like the bridge that leads like over by Chick-fil-A and stuff in Bourbonnais.
Armour Road.
I don't want to think about it.
Yep,
I had to drive that every day to work for a while.
That bridge under construction.
Well, Hobby Avenue in Kankakee has been, you know, that's been a
one thing that Chris Curtis said. I listened to one of his campaign speeches or a debate when he was running again, which he won. One of the things he said, he's like, kind of a disappointing part of progress is, there's going to be a time where things are shut down. There's cones.
Yeah.
So he just said, he's like, let's build buildings and rebuild roads. Let's do all these things, but also know it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Yes.
You also, there's a sacrifice.
Oof.
And that was a thing that just kind of was a good perspective of, there are some things that are going to have to be annoying and inconvenient for a while to have that change.
And you have to go through those things.
And you have to go through those things.
To get to the light.
Yeah.
You got to go through the mud a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to go through the mud a lot.
Yeah.
And that goes with so many things. And that includes the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know? And I think a perspective that I have gained, having, in a way, left where I grew up, left that attitude behind, chose something for myself. I got to choose my school. And then after school, I got to choose where I wanted to go in the entire world. And I chose to come back. And it's given me a whole different perspective and attitude on the place that I grew up, which is maybe life isn't happening elsewhere and I'm stuck in this bubble. Maybe there's just a bunch of bubbles everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I like that perspective.
Maybe that is just the way it is. You're not missing out on anything. I know this is an overused phrase, but the grass is greener where you grow it.
Yes.
On the side you grow it.
Yeah.
I just think that is so true.
It's very true.
Not everybody's wired that way. I think a lot of people like to go to the city where they can be one of thousands of millions.
Well, everyone's meant to be somewhere.
Sure.
But the important part is that you find your bubble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people want to live in a place that's big enough to have opportunities, but small enough to still feel like home. And part of that is appreciating and embracing the bubble, saying, this is where I'm going to make my home.
Yeah.
You know, my community is doing all of these events for community engagement. Maybe instead of complaining online about how we don't have this restaurant, maybe start by going to the community.
Does that restaurant start with a P?
I just want a chocolate cake shake, Jake.
Gosh, that sounds so good right now.
I'm still waiting for the Raisin Canes.
Probably we'll get a Raisin Canes before Portillo's.
Let's go and get my point, guys.
You know, I know, but you know, I will say I want to piggyback off of, you know, I did tell a story at the second Yarn Factory listeners last year, and that was the point I was trying to make in a piece of my story where I said, you know, you really don't like Kankakee, just leave. You know, go somewhere that you will be happy.
Yes.
And it's okay not
and
to
it's
like.
not I'm kicking you out, get out of here. It's truly, if there's a place that you would prefer to be, I want you to be there too.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you are going to be here, you have chosen that.
Yes.
And you have chosen that. So all you are is noise. And we've all seen it. But that's a thing that's been really cool to see. I've seen so much happen in the past 5 years in not just Kankakee, but the whole county. So much happened in the past 5 years than I ever saw in my whole childhood. And And you do have this consistent group of people who, for me, I was able to start seeing progress in my 20s, but there probably are a lot of people who spent 40, 50 years only seeing nothing happen or decline. So I understand, you know, but there's a certain point.
It's perspective.
It's perspective. There's a certain point where it's like, if this is the bubble you're going to choose to be in, you got to root for it to be better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this podcast is a really unique way of being able to explore that bubble. I know especially a lot of people our age, we're the least inclined to go check out a new restaurant or just go to this thing. A lot of us are very antisocial.
Just go to McDonald's.
Yeah. Our bubble is the entire world because we're online all the time.
Right. Yes.
And you don't even want to walk down the street to your local coffee shop.
No.
So my challenge for you guys is start with this podcast. It's a way to, you don't even have to have a real conversation.
No, you don't have to go anywhere.
You get to sit in the room and start meeting people that are here in this bubble. That's a great way to get that ball rolling of being like, you know what, I like where I'm at.
I never thought about that from that perspective. I mean, I know there's people that actually they recently moved here and they want to know more about the area, so they've tuned into the podcast, But
naturally, and I saw it happen after college. A lot of people plan to move. And they have the attitude of moving.
And they didn't, college, right?
And then they go back home.
Oh, okay.
Some of them do go, but a lot go back home.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of that. A lot of people I went to high school with left and then they came back. And that's the thing. It's an attitude and perspective change. Yeah. And I think it's good because it's for the first time, this is a place that you chose.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Or sometimes it chooses you. Yeah.
Ooh, I've been chosen. By
Oliver gave me a lot of scholarship. I've been chosen.
Yeah, sometimes it does work that way.
Yeah. What is a small little fun fact or thing about you that probably no one on the podcast knows?
Oh man, that's one of those hard questions. I always ask people.
Here's an example of one of your answers.
Okay.
You grew up working in a printing shop.
I did. Yes, I did.
That's a little tidbit of information people might not know.
I guess going back to episode milestones, we were talking about earlier, and I was actually thinking about this the other day. It was so cool to kind of be personal and a little selfish on a few times I had family members on the podcast. My grandfather, talking about printing, my grandfather, Franklin Weber, who owned F. Weber Printing he was a printer since age 11 up until the print shop closed when
child labor laws were a little more loose.
Well, this was all on his own.
Okay.
He was working for himself, so it was a little different. But
the kids in the mines, they were
right.
They loved it down there.
Yeah, they did. And so getting to have him on the podcast and tell his story was just so cool. And I'll always be so proud of that. And also my brother Josh was on the podcast, not about himself, but him and we did an episode about the church we grew up in. And that was St. Joseph in Mantino. He actually wrote a book about the church, and there used to be a school attached to it called Our Lady Academy. It was run by nuns. And so he wrote a whole book about it, and he did a tremendous job. And I'm not just saying that because he's my brother. He's an amazing writer. And so when he released the book, we did an episode about
that's cool.
About the history, and that was really fun to get to do with my brother. Because we did music together when we were younger, so to still kind of like do something together in a creative way was self-fulfilling. So it was just cool that I got to do that, with a few of my family members,
Yeah.
Speaking of music, I forgot. Yeah, you told me that when I first started working here. Your music, is it still out there? Can you
it's still out there.
All right. Well, what's
tell
the
us
name?
that fun fact for those who don't know. Your music career.
My music career. Oh man, what do you want to know? Where should I start? Well, that's a whole nother.
Were you in a band?
Podcast. I was in a band.
What was the band name?
So I started the band when I was 13. It was actually originally called The Other Way.
Okay.
Well, this was the early 2000s. So things were
What
a
a
lot
time.
things were a lot different when it came to, LGBTQ stuff and, being gay and that kind of thing. That was back when it was still, I guess, acceptable, and it shouldn't have been, for people to like, oh, you're gay, you know, like that kind of thing. And people thought we were gay because
Like all the band members?
No, like our friends. They thought we were gay because our name was The Other Way. Because they thought The Other Way.
I gotcha.
The Other Way sounds like,
You're going the other way.
So
right?
everyone was,
Interesting.
saying that. But obviously, none of us were homosexual, which is fine. But at the time.
So how long did you have that band name before you changed it?
Only a few years.
Got it.
Yeah. No, and then it became The Projection, which is what most.
And how many members are in this band?
It rotated between. There was always 3 at least. Sometimes there were 5. Actually, at one point, it might have gotten to 6 because there was a point in time where we had 3 guitar players, including myself.
Shout out.
So yeah, that was fun. We had a lot of different members. I was the only reoccurring one. I mean, there were some that were there for a long time too.
And did you guys like write stuff? Is that what you did, or
yes,
was it
we
like
wrote
covers?
No, we wrote our own songs.
Really?
We did a few covers, but the intention was always to write our own music, and I wrote the most of it, the majority of it, and then I'd bring it to the band, and then they would kind of morph it, and so The Projection, technically, that started in 2005. It's 2025, so 20 years later.
Wow.
But it's not still going,
did
of course.
Did it stay as The Projection?
It did.
Okay.
Up until the end in 2015.
Got it.
So The
Are
Projection.
you on Apple Music or Spotify?
Yes.
Oh, man.
All the above. You can find The Projection. We put out 2 full-length albums and 1 EP.
Really neat. What's
Yes.
your best song, do you think?
Oh, gosh. I don't know what the top song on there is right now. I bet it's probably... I don't know what my favorite... Late Night in Logan Square is one of my favorite songs. Because that was one of my favorite songs to play. Also, Not a Day Goes By. That was actually written by my brother Josh.
Nice.
Who I talked about earlier.
And did you sing as well?
I did. I was the lead vocalist. Yeah. And we had a few members that they would sometimes sing lead over the years. Brett, our lead guitarist, did that for a while.
You guys?
That's us. Yeah. So,
That's cool. Here's the
We
song.
did.
Late Night in Logan Square. You said that's one of your favorites?
Late Night in Logan Square. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Chicago felt so right with you by my side. The city never looked so right.
Oh, yeah. Huge Green Day fan.
I feel Green Day.
Yeah. Actually,
This you singing?
yes. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, that was you?
It was me. That was me.
Was my way. Yes, you were drunk. I know I shouldn't have, but I started to fall in love. I don't know what happened here today.
You should be at Merchant Street, dude. What is this?
Well, we did play Merchant Street twice.
No
Back in the day.
way.
Yeah. The last time we played was in 2012.
That's so cool.
It was a lot of fun. It was also a lot of hard work. We were trying to make it like everyone else.
Right. And how did it end? Just kind of fizzled out?
I got burnt out.
That's fair.
I was tired of not being able to pay my bills. I was when I made the decision, I think I was 23 or 24. So about 10 years ago. And I was working full time at my grandpa's print shop and pursuing the band. But yeah, I just got burnt out and decided, I wanted to change careers, and that's where media comes in. That's where radio and podcasting all came in. But yeah, we had our final show in 2015. We have we did play a reunion show in oh gosh, was that 22? It was either 22 or 23. And it was just a small show. It wasn't like a big deal kind of thing. It was just at a bar in Indiana because our bassist Jeremy lives in like the Griffith, Indiana area. So I think the bar we played at for the reunion show was in Griffith. But anyway, yeah, just got to be, I myself just felt burnt out. But it's actually the other guys, they did continue on. They formed another band and some of them still play. Jeremy still plays for sure. I don't know about Connor or Colin if they're still playing, but cool. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And I mean, I got to do some crazy things in that time. So,
we've just edited something out. I checked. We have 6 minutes left. So
how do we sum this up?
Jake, these are your 6 minutes. You and your audience.
It's hard to sum up 4 years in 6 minutes, or probably less at this point. The main thing that I want everyone to know, including both of you, is just how thankful I am for this opportunity. None of this would have been possible if it wasn't for everyone that was involved, whether it was a very simple sharing of an episode on your Facebook page, something as simple as that. I truly am, and I mean that wholeheartedly. This really was a community effort. The community allowed me to be in this position, to be the host. And that's why I say this is the community's podcast. It's, I was just the person running the day-to-day operations, which is obvious. I'm not discrediting my work. It was very important. And, I do feel like it's my baby, but I really do feel like it was very much a community effort. All the sponsors, all of our Patreon supporters, everything. Pathfinder has helped continue it on, and obviously they still will do that.
We still will,
which I'm very grateful for, and I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do. I mean, it would take me all day to list off every single person's name, but to all the guests, all the sponsors, all the listeners, I hope you know that how much you mean to me, how much my family means to me. I haven't even mentioned my family. I mean, I can't even tell you how crazy I've driven my wife with my work schedule, because I'm with this podcast just constantly working all the time. And, having a family, that's really hard. Everyone kind of has to do their part, really, so that I could do my part. And so, it was no different than like when I hosted the Wake and Jake morning show on WFAV. My mom was carrying the brunt of that because since it was a morning show, I had to get up at, the crack of dawn but she watched Owen, my son, so that I could go to work, so, and she did that for a long time until she couldn't do it anymore. And then I couldn't do the show anymore. So, long story short, since we only have so much time, because we could go on forever.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to know that is listening how grateful I am. And I'm happy that the podcast will continue on and that I'm still around, so in the community, and I'm grateful for that. So just thank you. And thank you guys for doing this, this episode too. I'm very, because I wasn't sure if this would happen. So thank you.
It was important to us that did happen, and thank you for everything as well. This is your baby, so
thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy. The silver lining is that you guys get to continue this on and morph it, and I'm happy. That makes me happy. Yeah. So
good.
Well, do you want to close it out one more time?
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you so much for listening to Kankakee Podcast. Follow, like, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or, follow us on social media at Kankakee Podcast. That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore.
Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river carries on.